Hi everyone, my name is Hayley Frend, and I notice in the promotional material sent out, I'm listed as the breast specialist. Personally, I prefer the boob wizard, or maybe the titty virtuoso, or the back master. You get what you're given. So. But it's always strange when I talk about my work, because people are never quite sure how to react, especially guys, given what I call the look. If you imagine for a minute, I'm a guy I just met at a pub, doesn't happen often, but he says, "So, I'm doing a PhD, what's that on?" Boobs. I don't actually just say boobs, but that's all he hears. So. Boobs. Him. And that's the look. And I know no matter how fascinating I make the next 2 minutes of my work sound, he's not going to hear any of it. All he hears is, "Don't look at a breast, don't look at a breast, don't look at a breast." Maintain eye contact. Kids are great because you don't get any of that awkwardness. I was recently at a family fancy dress party and I was dressed as a cow. Rock and roll. But my little 4-year-old nephew came up to me and he looked at my costume and he studied me for a while. And he was particularly looking at my udders. And without looking up from my udders, he said to me, with real respect in his voice, he said, "I like your willies." You know that awkward moment of any party where there's a gap in the music and everyone goes quiet all at the same time? Well, that's when I screeched, "These aren't my willies, these are my boobies!" I don't go to family fancy dress parties anymore. But my mission today is to convince you that boobs are great. I don't think this will be too difficult. I reckon probably about half of you are convinced. The reason I find mammal gland biology fascinating is what you can do with it. There's a guy in my lab that's building a synthetic mammal gland in a dish. And this has huge implications for science. You can learn how breast cancers grow, you can screen potential breast cancer drugs, and non-silicone implants. If only PIP had come to us instead of the dodgy guy selling silicone out the back of his car. But that was bad, wasn't it? When I heard that story, I thought someone's having a really bad day. I can just imagine it at the silicone factory, or I should say at the implant factory, some guy in the back going, Frank, get the new silicone, I'm about to make the double Fs." That's how I imagine it happens. Frank's in the stockroom. Shit. Fuck. I've not ordered the silicone. What the hell am I going to do? It's 10 to 5. The mattress place down the road, they use silicone, right? It's got to be the same. Turns out not. So why are boobs great? One reason is that actually everybody has breasts, even men. And if you ask them nicely, some of them can even lactate. This is true. I know a guy in London that can do it. It's delicious. I mean, it's fascinating. Don't worry, I don't think it's going to take off. You're not going to see moob milk on the shelves of Tesco's anytime soon. The reason for this is that the breasts begin growth in the embryo as very rudimentary structures in both males and females. And it's when testosterone is switched on in the males that they then regress. And this is why men have nipples. But actually, we should all be incredibly grateful for our breasts. And that's because not everything has them. Or more specifically, not all mammals have them. The duckbill platypus doesn't. What the duckbill platypus has is an enlarged sweat gland. And the young will literally lick sweaty patches of fur. So we should all be grateful we're not a duckbill platypus. Can you imagine page 3? So actually the breast is pretty unique because most of the growth occurs after birth. At puberty, a massive, a significant amount of growth occurs. Finally the training bar can come off and the breasts have arrived. And this is because the ducts that are eventually going to carry milk to the nipple start growing and branching until they fill the pad of fat in the breast. And this is where development largely stops. But we do get small amounts of growth and regression with each estrous cycle, with each menstruation. And science will tell us that this is because of the hormones coursing through our bodies. What I think this tells us is that Mother Nature had shares in the licenza. And this is why no matter what size bra you buy, the next week it will not fit. I don't think that's going too well for her. Turns out Mother Nature, very creative, not a great business mind. So we're stuck like that until pregnancy. And at pregnancy we get another burst of growth. And I like to think of this as God's extra little punishment for Adam. The bit that didn't make the Bible, sort of like the director's cut. And Eve shall have massive breasts, but it'll be when her stomach is so big she can no longer see her toes. Sort of more ghost, less God there. Need to work on that bit a bit. So in pregnancy, that's when the milk-producing cells of the gland grow in what we call milk buds or alveoli. And that brings me on to the next greatest thing about breasts, in that they produce food. Now, you don't look too impressed, but if I told you my ears extruded bacon, you'd be amazed. That's effectively what the breasts are doing, right? Point to note, though, it's not generally socially acceptable to ask for a drink of milk from a new mum. In fact, it's not generally socially acceptable to drink breast milk at all. Which is odd, because we'll happily drink it from an animal that spends all day farting. And when we get older, we'll drink it from a cow as well. So once the breasts have finished being 24-hour McMummies, they regress. And this means the cells of the gland die. All the structures that have grown during pregnancy will die off, although without the familiar stench of death, because that would be unpleasant. But the gland actually returns to what we call its virgin state. Probably the only part of you that will after giving birth. But the really remarkable thing about breasts is that they can regenerate. If you get pregnant again, they will literally regrow and come back from the dead. In this way, they're much like a zombie. And after careful consideration, I think this is probably why guys like them so much. But so to conclude, mammary glands produce milk fine-tuned to the exact needs of the young. They're capable of massive cell growth and death and can regenerate as many times as is required. And, in the immortal words of Corner Shop, everybody needs a bosom for a pillow. Thank you, good night.